The third and final example of manifest destiny is the Mexican-American War. It had its roots in Texas independence. Mexico remained resentful of that independence movement. Tensions flared when the United States of America annexed Texas in 1845, and the United States wanted to move then its border down to the Rio Grande Valley. That was the exact border that remained in dispute between Mexico and the Lone Star Republic. To make matters worse, American immigration continued into places like California. Mexico had tried to outlaw American immigration into their territories, but United States citizens were not going to be limited in their freedom. Manifest Destiny picked up one of its greatest champions in James Polk. He hoped for expansion. We can see this in his inaugural address, March 4th, 1845. The world has nothing to fear from military ambition in our government. It's great. The United States is not a military power. The world has nothing to fear. Foreign powers, therefore, should look on the annexation of Texas to the United States not as a conquest of a nation seeking to extend her dominions by arms and violence, but as a peaceful acquisition of territory once her own, and by adding another member to our confederation with the consent of that member, thereby diminishing the chances of war and opening to them new and ever-increasing markets for their products. So Texas provides a great example. The Texas independent movement, made up mainly of illegal immigrants who had moved into Texas, fought an independence fight against Mexico, declared their independence, and that they then freely chose to enter into the United States. So the United States didn't take anything from Mexico. The Mexicans simply lost their ability to govern by a rebellion. Those rebel forces, who happened to be made up mostly of citizens of the United States, then asked to join the United States of America. This was not conquest. This was not taking other people's lands. This was a free people seeking a free solution to live in peace. It is confidently believed that our system may be safely extended to the utmost bounds of our territorial limits, and that, as it shall be extended, the bounds of our nation, so far from being weakened, will become stronger. What then would be the territorial limits that he's speaking of? Well, that's the Pacific Ocean. And so in his inaugural address, James Polk is expressing his desire to move from sea to shining sea, not by conquest, by having free peoples rise up in rebellion against the Mexican government and then asking to become part of the United States. That would not be military conflict. That would be free people rewriting their social contract. And as long as the free people in California wanted to join the United States of America, James Polk would welcome them with open arms. President Polk then embraced manifest destiny. The United States should stretch from one coast to the other coast. There's a problem with this, though. California only had 800 Americans by 1846. There were only 800 people who had immigrated from the United States into California. The population of California was much larger than that. And so these 800 in a minority were in no position on their own to create an independence movement, take over California, and then ask to join the United States of America. And so Polk reached out to Thomas Larkin, who owned the Monterey fur trade, and asked him for his assistance. He also reached out to John Sutter, a Swissman living in Sacramento. Polk wrote to Larkin, If the people of California should desire to unite their destiny with ours, they will be received as brethren. Well, who are these people that would be willing to unite their destiny with the United States of America? He's not asking Native Americans to join. He's not asking Hispanics to join. He is particularly appealing to the 800 Euro-American minority, that if they ask for help in their independence, President Polk would intervene on their behalf. To create a situation for war then, Polk sent General Zachary Taylor to the Rio Grande River. This was the border that he claimed for the United States of America. Mexico refused to recognize this border. The border went up through Texas. Polk was hoping to provoke a response from Mexico to start an offensive campaign. That offensive campaign began in 1846 and lasted through 1847. These red dots on the map show the areas in which U.S. military forces moved into Mexican territory and seized control of the major cities. In 1847, Polk ordered an American general to attack first at Veracruz. That's the red dot on the bottom right-hand side of the corner. The American army then marched inland and took control of Mexico City. These American military victories made it clear that Mexico's neighbor to the north was much stronger, both in numbers and in military might. Mexico decided to capitulate, to surrender. Once Mexico surrendered, the United States entered into treaty talks and negotiated freely the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. This established the Rio Grande as the border between the neighbors, the United States on the north, Mexico in the south. Mexico had to give up New Mexico, what is today Nevada, and California. And the United States bought all of this land for $15 million. So the United States didn't conquer the southwestern part of North America. No, the United States bought it. Mexico voluntarily decided to give up its northern borderlands to the United States of America in exchange for a $15 million payment. This was not a war of conquest. This was a purchase from Mexico. Mexico freely and voluntarily decided to take payment in exchange for the land. And so the United States achieved its goal. It stretched from coast to coast. This was a fulfillment of manifest destiny. James Polk liberated the peoples of New Mexico and California to allow them to live freely as part of the United States of America. And so the Anglo populations in those regions began to organize themselves into states. But one thing should remain clear, that New Mexico, which had the largest population of all in these former Mexican territories, the United States would not allow it to organize. There simply were not enough white people. If New Mexico organized as a state in 1847, there would be a majority Hispanic population, and the United States was not going to allow any non-white state to organize. The United States, its destiny was a destiny for white Americans to overtake the continent.